If you are an artist who just wants to be told what to do in order to improve, this video is for you. Welcome to the Self-Taught Artist, where I basically give you the tools to build your own at-home atelier. I created this course for my younger self who really just wanted to sit down and be told what to draw and what to paint in order to practice and improve. So in today's lesson of the Self-Taught Artist, we are going to be talking all about shadow. I have to say I'm really excited because this is basically one of our last main lectures for our drawing series for the moment before we go into painting. We're always going to come back and revisit drawing as far as this main just drawing section. This is our last one, which is really exciting. As far as supplies go, they're the same. Nothing's changed from our last few videos. The reference image will pop up either here or here once we start drawing, depending on where it fits into the screen. And if you are on YouTube, then you get one free follow along, draw along with me, where I will walk you through step by step. However, if you're interested in more practice, then check out my Patreon, because there we continue on and every single lecture has additional drawing exercises. So you get the one draw along, but then we do 2 or 3 more for each lecture. On top of the fact that there's also sections that are just drawing, no lecture, just a bunch of exercises. So again, be sure to check that out if you're interested. Let's get into the lecture. So in our last lecture that was about light, I mentioned that shadow is the key element to creating form. When we're oil painting, when we're drawing, one of the first steps we always do is map in the shadows. And that is because it allows us to see in a more general and accurate way what kind of forms and shapes we're dealing with in our artwork. It also is what gives power to the light. So everyone gives light the credit because it's kind of where our eye is naturally drawn to. It's when there tends to be more color, more detail, more life, more fun in the lights, but we don't get that luminosity and that feeling of light without having these shadows. So let's talk about a few characteristics of shadow. We have our dark accents, which are going to be the darkest of our drawing. Think underneath a sphere. It's going to be the closest thing to the base of the sphere where no light hits. We have the body of the shadow, which is the large shadow shape that we think of. The body of our shadow also includes bounce light, which is light from surrounding areas that bounce, illuminating somewhere on the contour of the object. So think if you had kind of like a red light, it would bounce back up into the shadow and give the shadow a reddish glow. Then we also have shadow edge. This is the boundary around the body of the shadow, and it's more permeable than people think, but more or less sharp depending on the circumstances. So just like how we had talked in the light section, our shadows are basically what anchor an object and make it look like it's not floating. It gives us a sense of light direction. It gives us a sense of weight in space. It reveals a lot about the form of an object. It does kind of describe what kind of light we're working with. So a low light is going to give a longer shadow. A sharper edge to our shadows are going to indicate a stronger light source versus a more diffused edge indicates a further away light source. In relation to drawing and in oil painting, it can be really helpful to move from shadow into the light, because halftones, which is this in-between region between light and shadow, you're more likely to honor those if you're going from dark to light rather than light to dark. But I also recommend trying the opposite, because as you've seen in past drawings, sometimes I'll key in the shadows, then I'll go straight into where my whites are and then work backwards kind of from there, or flip back to shadows and build up the shadows. But I at least have my shadow shapes established. Then I kind of put in the brightest white and I can key it in that way. I don't, however, do that in oil paint, which you will see when we get into our painting section. I only really key in those whites when I'm working on the toned paper. Something to also remember, depending on what your reference looks like, you might actually have to go darker and more condensed in your values in the shadow regions than what you think, because that will give a greater impression of luminosity. So with all of this, we do have a few drawing exercises to go through. So let's hop right in. Okay, for this first one, let's just do kind of a series of quick warm-ups of sketchy examples of shadow and kind of at the same time light. So you should have the reference popped up on your screen. Setting my boxes. You know what? Let's do all three. Okay, and we'll make them, I want to make these relatively quick. So we have kind of a V like that. About a third of the way. There's a tree that goes about that high. We've got tree shape. Here, I really am just doing the most generic of shapes, okay? We're doing a quick sketch. We're really just trying to establish these general shapes. Sorry, I had something drawn underneath, so if you see a whole bunch of marks, that's why, and I apologize, but okay. Really, like I said, just a super quick map in. Let's get a super quick idea of these trees. Because of the nature of the toned paper, I'm going to fill in the lights first because they're easier to work. Oh no. I find that sometimes the white is easier to work into, and it's really hard to do the opposite, so. I'm going to do a quick cover of this surface. Now let's map in some of our shadows. I'm using the side of my pencil to keep things kind of as soft as I can because we're going to go in and blend this with the blending stump. Well, this is very kind of generalized shadow, so we are just You know, get a little crazy, get a little bold with it. Okay, I have my HB now. And now I'm just gonna go in and darken some of these areas. Still keeping it loose. We're aiming to do this in, you know, don't spend more than 10, 15 minutes on each one. We want this to be a quick study. I just realized I forgot to go in with my blendy stump, but that's okay. We'll hit it after we use this HB. So squinting really quickly, just adding in some generalized scratchies for the tree, building up depth. Blendy stump. I'm not gonna go too crazy with this because I kind of want it to be just a little bit scratchy. In with our 2B, and let's treat this as our maximum. If this is your first time watching, then the reason we do this, or the reason I do this, I should say, is because this is really beneficial for people that maybe get a little bit carried away with their darks. So if you treat this as your darkest dark, and when you look at things, you're like, oh yeah, that's dark. Sometimes we can just get a little bit overzealous with it. And I've found that by doing that with this 2B, protects my 4B so that I always can just go ever so slightly darker. I tend to kind of like overestimate what's dark at this stage. And pretending like this is my darkest. I don't actually think I'm gonna do any more blending, but I don't know if you can see it, but there's basically 3 spots that I see that can be a little bit darker. It's right here, right there, and maybe a little bit right here. Let's darken some of this just to make everything else pop a lot more. Great. Okay, first one done. Let's go to the second and do a similar process. Mapping the skyline. quick sketch, so, you know, let's not get too caught up in the details. Nice and relatively simple. Let's go in with our whites and map in the sky and anything else that we see as white. Which includes the houses. Let's map in this road. Sorry, mine is kind of chopped off a little bit, but let's go in with our HB. Start filling in some of these shadow shapes. You see how broad my marks are right now? I'm really staying quite sketchy and loose with this. I'm gonna build up a little bit of gradient. I'm still in my HB. Just gonna build up a little bit more darks in here. Okay, I'm gonna take my blendy stump. I'm not gonna go crazy with this, but let's just do a little bit of a blend. Soften a little bit of some of those pencil marks. All right, 2B, treating it as our dark. Gonna blend in kind of specific areas. Great, and then our 4B is saved for our darkest. It's definitely right here. Great. Look at, we're doing these in a really great time. Last one. Okay, that might look like absolutely nothing, and it kind of is. But what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go in and put these shapes, because there is such an emphasis on the light in this one. Let's do a little bit here, a little bit there. Now let's go in with some of our shadows, which is going to be interesting since so much of this is in shadow. I'm going to start with this tree. It's such a big kind of shape. I'm really just looking at shapes right now. Draw the shapes you see, not necessarily the specifics. our blender. Still curious, not everyone likes using the blenders. So in the comments, let me know, how do you like the blenders? Are you enjoying the addition of them, or did you like it more when we weren't using them? And now we have our HB. We're just going one level darker on everything that needs to be darker. Okay, 2B. Okay, let's go on with our 4B and really just let's get some extra luminosity on these shadows let's really make that light pop by, whoops. Okay. Hopefully your drawing looks a little bit like this. That was short and sweet, but I think effective nevertheless. We did manage to get 3 in there instead of 1. This is a good example of what we would call quick draw or quick study, where really we're not trying to get bogged down by details. We're trying to get through these drawings efficiently. That's what it's a practice on. It's a practice of efficiency, identifying, committing, and working the side of your brain that's going to see bigger shapes first rather than detail. And how does this relate to shadow? Oftentimes this is a little bit of how we start. Drawings, paintings, all of these things start with shadow. We build from there, and we can see very clearly in these quick studies how valuable shadow shape is. And when we really look at it, especially when we just had the white on there first, you don't really get much of a sense of what's going on. You can get some indications sometimes, but it wasn't really until we got these shadows in there that those lights really had a voice and a shape, and we were able to identify what it was. And I think that's the power of the play between light and shadow. So, effective little quick draw session. Other than that, thank you so much for joining. I'm so excited to see you in the next one because we're gonna start painting. So look forward to some new supplies. We'll do a video for that first so that you can buy everything and then start our journey into oil paint. Okay, I'll see you there. Bye.